Yo, what's up, mystery solvers? Grab a seat, dim the lights, because I'm taking you deep into the shadowy corners of city streets where secrets and siren wails lurk. Today, it's all about the stench of murder and a nightmare begging to be cracked. You ready? Before we dive into the story, drop a line in the comments. Where are you watching this from? Let's make sure we're not alone in this chaos. Here's the deal. A tale that kicks off and ends with bloodstains on the pavement, trembling hands, and the cold glint of a gun. How did Julia and David's ordinary morning spiral into a tragedy? Who was watching who, and why was there a shadow on their every step? This ain't just a murder, folks. It's a trip to the darkest corners of the human soul. Every scene, every clue pull you closer to the truth, or maybe send you down a total dead end. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, because you don't want to miss how this story wraps up. Get ready to peel back the curtain on this mystery. The crime scene's calling. Let's dive in. 12 hours earlier, in the waning days of spring, around 9:30 in the morning, Julia and David walked side by side down a busy city street. The spring air brought a gentle breeze to the city. Trees swayed lightly with newly sprouted leaves, and sunlight slipped through the branches, casting dappled shadows on the pavement. Julia, in her mid-20s, stood out with her sharp features and a restless energy that seemed uncontainable. She wore a light gray jacket, faded blue jeans, and white sneakers. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a messy bun. Her arms were tightly crossed over her chest, her shoulders stiff, her steps quick and determined. Her face betrayed a clear unease. Her brows were furrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. Beside her, David, in his early 30s, looked thin and disheveled. His dark green t-shirt was wrinkled, his gray sweatpants stained and worn. A plastic bag dangled from his left hand, rustling with every step, swaying slightly in the breeze. His face was pale, beads of sweat dotted his forehead, and his eyes darted around nervously. A slight tremor shook his hands, his fingers gripping the bag's handle tightly. Their footsteps created a rhythmic beat on the pavement, but the tension between them overshadowed any sense of harmony. Julia stopped suddenly, her body language a storm of anger and unease. Her hands were clenched into fists, her arms still crossed tightly, her eyes locked onto David, a mix of defiance and buried fear in her gaze. David stepped closer, his pale face standing out in the morning light. Sweat trickled from his forehead down to his chin, his brows knit together, his lips trembling. The plastic bag kept rustling in his hand, a vague weight inside, shifting with each move. Julia took a step back, her eyes scanning the street, searching for a way out. A woman hurried by with a coffee cup in hand. A man sped past on a bike. A car horn blared in the distance. A seagull soared overhead with a cry. A stray dog lazily trotted past a trash can. The city hummed with the bustle of morning, but this everyday rhythm faded under the weight of the tension between them. They kept walking, their steps now quicker, more uneven. Julia's hands were stuffed in her pockets, her fingers fidgeting nervously against the fabric. Her shoulders were rigid, her head slightly bowed as if carrying an invisible burden. David's movements grew more frantic. His hands waved in the air, his fingers rubbing together in agitation. The plastic bag swung at his side, the mysterious weight inside, a constant, ominous presence.
The street quieted for a moment. A mother led her small child across the road. A street vendor arranged fruit on his cart. A breeze dragged a scrap of newspaper along the pavement. But this calm shattered when David stopped abruptly, his face contorted, his eyes bloodshot and fixed. Sweat now streamed down his cheeks. He plunged his hand into the bag, fingers fumbling for something. Julia froze, her breath caught, her eyes wide with shock. David pulled out a pistol. The metal gave off a dull gleam in the morning sun. Julia's hands flew up instinctively, palms open in a defensive stance. Her face turned ashen, her lips quivered, her eyes filled with fear and disbelief. David's finger tightened on the trigger, his hand shaking, a flicker of hesitation crossing his face. Time seemed to freeze. Then, a deafening bang tore through the air. A red mark bloomed on Julia's forehead. Her body went limp, and she collapsed to the pavement. She lay still, dark red blood pooling and spreading through the cracks in the sidewalk. David, hands trembling, aimed at her chest and fired twice more. Each shot echoed sharply. His face twisted with pain, fear, and a strange resolve. Still clutching the gun, he broke into a run, his steps fast and erratic. David ran through the streets, his breathing ragged and uneven. His face was drenched in sweat, his eyes wild with desperation. He cut through a crowded road. People went about their morning, some rushing to work, others heading to a cafe for breakfast. A young guy bobbed his head to music in his earbuds as he passed. A woman trudged along with shopping bags in hand. David's frantic sprint clashed with these ordinary moments. He darted into a narrow alley, shadows of old buildings looming around him. Faded graffiti marked the walls, litter cluttered the ground. He emerged into a small wooded park. The park was calm and peaceful in the early morning. Tall oak trees stretched toward the sky. Dew glistened on the grass. Birds chirped in the branches. The wind rustled the leaves softly. David collapsed at the base of an oak tree, pulling his knees to his chest. His hands shook violently, the pistol still in his grip, its metal cold and heavy. His face was ghostly white, his eyes lost in a void, his brows furrowed in agony. Sweat dripped from his chin.
A long, agonizing weight hung in the air. The breeze itself seemed to hold its breath. Then another sharp bang rang out, final and jarring. David's body slumped sideways. His arms fell limp. The gun slipped from his hand onto the grass. Blood stained the green blades, seeping slowly into the soil. The wind picked up again, brushing through the tree branches, leaving the park quiet and indifferent. Sirens started to wail in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder and closer. Julia's lifeless body still lay on the pavement, the blood now a wide, dark stain around her. A crowd had gathered, people stunned and horrified. Some covered their mouths with their hands, others whispered, trying to make sense of the scene. A young man pulled out his phone, hands shaking as he seemed to record, while an older man leaned on his cane, watching from a distance. Police cars screeched to a halt, tires grating against the asphalt. Officers jumped out, quickly cordoning off the area, pushing the crowd back. Forensic teams arrived, gloved hands carefully collecting evidence. The plastic bag lay abandoned on the pavement. A bullet casing glinted in the sunlight. A footprint stood out in the dirt from David's hurried escape. The teams worked meticulously, taking notes, snapping photos. A seasoned detective, gray hair streaking his temples, knelt beside Julia's body, his face grim. His eyes traced the wound on her forehead, the 2 bullet marks on her chest. Around him, forensic experts moved with purpose. One
collected a blood sample. Another measured distances with a device. The air grew heavy, the morning's gentle breeze unable to lift the weight of the tragedy. Questions lingered. What was eating at David? Why had he killed Julia so brutally? Why, then, had he turned the gun on himself? The mystery sat there, a knot waiting to be untangled. The episode ended with these heavy questions, leaving the viewer in a swirl of curiosity and uncertainty as the scene faded to black.